monetizing aviation content. So obviously, aviation YouTube has been around forever. We're not OGs in the game, but we've been doing it now for 5 years. We've learned quite a lot, so we wanted to share that with you guys. So just real quick, who we are. I'm Drew.
I'm Lainey.
This is Lainey, and together we're Fly Me to the Fun. Huh?
I was like, I didn't know if it worked. I hadn't talked into it yet.
There you go. A little bit about us. So I've been a private pilot since 2013 and a plane owner of the Cessna 150 that we have since 2020, so it was a COVID purchase. And we've now been full-time creators since last year. And since beginning, the channel has now grown. We've got about 500,000 subscribers across platforms, and we've done about 200 million views. So a lot of that is short form, and then we're investing a lot more of our attention now in long form in YouTube. So we'll be talking a lot about that later. You want to tell about how the channel came to be?
Yeah, so Drew told me, he was like, I'm gonna buy a plane. And of course we're sitting, during COVID, I'm sitting in a 700 square foot apartment. And I was like, that sounds like a bad idea. And as a supportive girlfriend, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna make myself a part of this. I was like, I'm gonna buy into it. I'm gonna make it an Instagram, as if it was like a puppy or something. You know, get a dog and make a little Instagram for it. And so I brainstormed names, and I was like, Fly Me to the Fun. He's gonna fly me to the fun places. We're gonna go eat all this amazing food, and we're gonna go see a small section of the U.S. because the plane is very slow. And so that was kind of like the brain behind it. And then when I realized that I had no business making an Instagram, I didn't know anything about it. I was a 6th grade science teacher. And then I looked to Drew because he made content for a living. That was never for him, but it was for different businesses, different companies. And I was like, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? And eventually it kind of grew into us doing it together because he's basically a content expert. And so I was like, I know science. How can you make this better?
Yeah, it's funny. I started my career in aviation marketing, and I had a content creation agency for a number of years. So I've done content creation my entire career, but never for myself. So I think it took Lainey starting the account to be like, okay, now I can do it kind of for someone else, but it was Lainey, and then therefore us. So over the course of the last 5-ish years, we've both been putting more and more attention into it. And like I said, we do this full time now. So this is the full thing. We've got a lot of cool stuff planned. So let us dive in here. So what we're going to cover is making and monetizing aviation content. So first, we're going to talk about coming up with a compelling channel concept. So how you can differentiate your channel, come up with something that people are going to watch. Generating high viewership video ideas. We'll talk about kind of what that actually means. Obviously, it's pretty clear in how it's described, but just what goes into that and how you can do it intentionally. Pre-production, so how you can set yourself up for making really good videos ahead of time so you don't have to think about it as much while you're shooting. The shooting itself, retention optimized editing, which is a really big piece of getting high viewership videos. And then of course monetizing. So how can you make money doing this? How much can you make? When can you start monetizing? We're going to talk about all of that. So without further ado, coming up with a compelling channel concept, you don't always know where things are going to go. Again, the original concept for our channel was I Fly Lainey to the Fun, which is what we do. But that was going to be like looking for the best barbecue, or we kind of had tons of different ideas for the channel. And it's kind of evolved now into this, kind of challenge vlog format, which we'll talk a little bit about. But it's a good idea to have an idea of what your concept is going to be before you get started, so that you know the value that you're providing the viewer. You don't want to just strap cameras to the plane, press record, go out there and expect people to watch, because that just doesn't really work anymore. I highly recommend looking outside of aviation. There are tons and tons of huge channels that you can get a lot of really significant inspiration from. You look at the biggest channel that exists, Mr. Beast. You certainly don't have to mimic that. A lot of it's not feasible or safe for aviation, but there's a lot of elements that are incorporated in the channel concept in the videos that you can totally bring in, which we've done, like challenge-based videos, etc. Ryan Trahan, and again, there's an endless number of channels you could look at. These are some that we really like. Ryan Trahan is kind of like the adventure challenge vlog. He does just regular trips and exploration, but he gives himself rules and reasons and things he's trying to accomplish, which I think works really well to keep people watching when otherwise they might get bored and leave. Donut, again, it's kind of like a modern, almost like Top Gear. There's a show, it's comparison, things like that. Look outside of aviation and think, what could you do that works with what your day-to-day is, your job, however you interact with aviation. How could you apply what works for those channels to what it is you do? If you fly professionally, if you're a CFI, if you own a plane, if you rent a plane, what could you be doing that's going to be entertaining to people? Then go viewer first. So once you've considered yourself, start thinking about how people will receive it. No one's going to care automatically. You have to make people care. That's going to be like a huge theme of what we talk about here, is that what worked in the past of just recording flights and cutting out the boring parts does not work anymore. You have to be way more intentional than that. So go viewer first, think about what they're going to be seeing. What's their reason when they come across your content and channel? What's the reason for them to say, I want to subscribe to this? I don't want to just watch the video, but I want more of this type of thing. The more you can think like that and present yourself that way with your bio and your branding, make it clear why they should follow, why they should subscribe. So define your concept. You can say that in a single sentence. We're a adventure challenge vlog channel that uses a small airplane. However you can quickly convey that to someone, it should be that easy. And of course, it'll change over time, but you want to start with a differentiated, compelling channel. And again, I like looking outside of aviation for inspiration. You can look inside too. If there are channels that you watch and love, like Aviation 101, kind of filmmaker style, you think about the editing, the cinematic shots, if you want to do that approach. What we do, where it's less about the cinematics and more about kind of the rules and things that you set up for the video, which of those appeals to you? Which one plays to your strengths? If you're good on camera, maybe you want to talk more talking head style or like research-based stuff, or if you want to just go and get out there and fly, whatever plays to your strengths. Generating high viewership video ideas. So again, a high viewership video idea, it's an idea that has mass appeal. High viewership meaning like in the millions of views. Aviation is a niche, we all love it, but how can you kind of be entertaining to your core audience of pilots and other people that love aviation, but how can you also appeal to people that don't necessarily? And the cool part about that is that if you do that correctly, you're bringing new people into aviation. I've had a lot of people hit us up over the last 5 years saying they came across a video that led to a discovery flight, which led to a private pilot's license, which led to buying a plane. We've had that several times. It's really cool. So the more you can think about appealing to the masses, which we're going to talk about here, how to do that. This is an example, just quickly. This is our biggest video on YouTube to date. This could have been just a flight vlog. This was basically us going to Nashville from Atlanta. Not much novel about that. So we were thinking, what rules can you create? How can you kind of gamify it? Or what can you add to make this more than just a flight vlog from Atlanta to Nashville? And so we thought, what if Lainey took Delta instead? So I'll fly by myself. We kind of figure out the timing so that we both leave the house at the exact same time. I commute to the small airport, she commutes to the big airport. She's on Delta, I'm flying. And then the first one, or the last one to Losers, which is a bar on Broadway, loses. So you have stakes, you have rules, you have intention, and this video really blew up for us. So the result of this one was 1.8 million views, and I remember debating whether it was worth it to buy the ticket to pull this off. We had to incur a cost doing that. I think it was like $200-something.
It was like a last-minute one-way flight to Nashville, which shouldn't cost $400, but it did. And I was like, I don't want to invest that much into this video. How will we ever make that money back? And then we really realized that if you are intentional with what you're filming, you do have potential to make it back. And so that was like one of those things where I was like, oh, I see it now. I align with the vision. I will follow you wherever you want to go.
So this one worked out really well. So this video from YouTube has made $8,500 to date, and it still does quite a few views every month. So it's still paying. It's something that you own forever that will pay you forever.
Who won?
Lainey won. She did win. I could have won. It was a headwind issue. It was very close. It was very
So you're
close.
saying you lost?
I did lose. And there's a pretty embarrassing consequence for that at the end of the video.
You had to sing karaoke, which we are not karaoke people. I would actually probably die if I had to do karaoke. And I will say it was
so bad.
It was really bad.
It was a Creed song too, but yeah. You gotta watch the video. It's at the very end, which we'll talk about payoffs at the end. So, going into making high viewership video ideas, it starts with the topic itself. Obviously, if we're aviation creators, the overarching topic is aviation, but how can you get more interesting than that? How can you have a little more broad appeal than that? For this video, the broad edition was Boeing. It's commercial aviation. That's bigger, it impacts more people. It's not GA. People don't know about Cessnas as much as they know about Boeings.
And at the time, Boeing was in the news quite a bit.
Which actually we think played into some of the popularity of this video. This was a time when Boeing was having newsworthy events related to doors, I think, which is also shown in the thumbnail there. And but again, tying to a larger topic, which in this case was commercial aviation. It's just more widely known. But what else can you do to get that mass appeal? You can latch on these bigger ideas. Adventure, exploration, that could be unique airports. Money is a universal thing. Everyone experiences money, so costs naturally play into people's curiosity, especially about the unknown of GA. People don't know, people think, I don't know how many times someone said, I'm not a millionaire, so I could never have a Cessna 150. That plane must cost $1 million. Bought it for $34,000. People don't know. So money is a huge unifying topic. education and careers, mechanical knowledge, of course the will it start, it's a huge category in aviation now because it transcends the niche. People watch that whether or not they like airplanes. They watch it because they like mechanical knowledge, they want to know how you're fixing it, carburetors, there are pieces of that are common to more people.
Jake's just not a mechanic. That's the only word he knows. Like carburetors, I
Yeah, I think there's one of
that.
those in there. Stories, of course, are universal, and then commercial military aviation. These are just some examples, and we'll talk more about universal elements that you can put within the story. But when you start thinking of topics, again, you're not just going from Atlanta to Nashville. What else could happen there? How could you tie something completely unrelated to just that flight in to make it more interesting to more people? So, wrong way. Then pick a proven format. So these are 5 that essentially, it almost encompasses everything. You could argue maybe there are a couple that are outliers, but essentially it boils down to you're explaining something, so you're teaching, you're giving commentary, you're telling a story, you've created a challenge, or you're showcasing something. That's pretty much it. So if you pick one of these, you can run the same content through different formats, and it would be a completely different video. We could have done how to fly a small plane to Nashville. We could have done ranking our experiences, commercial versus GA going to Nashville. That would appeal to a lot of people. You could do the story of it. We chose challenge, and it worked out, but it could have been a completely different video. And then showcase is one we've been doing a lot of lately, where you're showing some aspect, like an inside look. We've been doing going to hangar homes and showing unique airplanes, something like that. That kind of is almost in line with education. You're showing something new to someone. That's universally interesting as well. So beyond the format, this is the one that I think is probably the most important piece here, because with the right universal elements, you can make almost anything interesting. So again, money is probably one of the biggest ones. You can do a flight that is Atlanta to Nashville and say how much it costs to do this, and immediately it appeals to 10 times the people. People want to know that. We just did a video about flying to LaGuardia in the 150. We posted 2 videos within about 3 days of each other. The first one was, we did this thing, which is novel. We landed a small plane at LaGuardia at a big airport. But then 3 days later, we posted one saying, how much does it cost to do that? And that one did 3 million views instead of 300,000. So 10 times the interest, because money is universal. Everyone experiences it, and there's a lot of unknown with GA. Superlatives, the best, the worst, the cheapest, the fastest, the slowest, the most, the steepest, the shortest, the longest. Anytime you add a superlative to your title or your video concept, you're doing something that implies novelty. It's the most extreme of something. And that doesn't have to come at the cost of safety, it never should. But a good way to do that would be, we're going exploring the most expensive airport and the cheapest airport, which is a video we're talking about doing soon about FBOs. Stakes. So for the video we did about Nashville, it's not just who will get there first, but what happens if the person loses. In this case, it was, we didn't actually say it up front. We just said that there would be
unspeakable.
an unspeakable consequence. Then you also create a good reason to watch to the end to see what that is. You get the payoff. Stakes could be, honestly, as little, it could literally be, we've got a bet. We're gonna bet $5 on this. And if you keep talking about it and playing that up, it becomes a reason to watch. It does not have to be some super intense, high stakes thing. You can really just make it with storytelling. It's just some reason to keep watching to get the payoff.
Yeah, one of them was the Miata video, the one that I didn't actually lose, and I had to dress up as a unicorn on a street corner in a college town with a sign that said, I lost a bet, please honk at me. And they honk, turns out, a lot.
They do honk, they do. But yeah, we just made that up. It's just something embarrassing. It's just a reason to see who wins. So constraints and requirements, this is what Ryan Trahan does really well. So he'll say I'm gonna go, I'm flying to Dubai on this airline, but here are the rules. Why do those exist? They're fake. He's making them. He's saying, but I have to make a friend at every place I stop. I have to do this. And just by introducing that to your video, you give it some more universal interest to someone who doesn't care about the other thing, which is aviation. We are talking now about, I'll talk about this more when we get to editing too, but our goal with our channel is to get to a point where 50% of our content takes place in the plane and 50% is outside. And I could actually see it being more 75 outside, 25 inside. It still appeals to the aviation lover. You still see the airplane and the thought process behind flight planning and everything that goes into it. But you can appeal to more people if you show what happens on the ground and why you're there and what you're doing and what you're trying to find out, what the stakes are. I think that's how you really transcend the niche. Known things, of course, anything famous. If you say we're going to go to this airport, or you're going to say we're going to go to this airport that Tom Cruise has landed at, or whatever. Latching on to known things is another universal element. And then comparison. There are many more of these, but these are just some examples of ones that I really like quite a bit. some examples that you've seen. So Antiques Roadshow, I think, is a really cool example. That's a show about something very niche that has become very mass appeal because of universal elements. You have mystery, you have expert versus beginner, where someone brings an object in that they don't know what it's worth, the expert weighs in. You have money. There's a lot that goes into that show that makes it interesting to way more people than just antique enthusiasts. Top Gear also does a really good job, or did a really good job. About cars, definitely, and appeals to that audience 100%, but appeals to a lot more people than just car people because they have humor, comparison, stakes, rules, challenge, competition, all that stuff. Probably humor being one of the biggest ones. But there are endless examples of this, but again, it's applying those universal elements to a niche subject matter. So, pre-production, I want to talk about what you can do up front to make the creation process way easier, way more effective. This is a thumbnail, kind of ridiculous one, but it performed well, of a video that we created before we shot the video. So I highly, highly recommend, if you're doing YouTube especially, but even if you're doing short form content only, you wouldn't have a title and thumbnail, but you'd have the premise. In the case of YouTube, have the title and thumbnail created before you shoot the video. If you do nothing else, if you just have that, you'll have your North Star while you're shooting. You kind of know what the purpose of the video is. It's not just we're flying from Atlanta to Nashville, it's we're racing. So when I'm shooting, I have the camera set, I forget them because I'm flying, but I know what I'm talking about. I wonder where Laney is, I wonder if Laney's boarded yet. When I get there, I hope I don't lose. Like, you know the North Star, you know the thing you're talking about, so that when you edit later, you have a lot of good material to use. Having the title and thumbnail alone can help with that. Having the hook and outline takes that a step farther. So you know what the first 5 seconds of your video is going to be before you ever set out to shoot it. In this case, it was, I'm flying my plane to Nashville, and then he's taking Delta. Whoever gets there, blah, blah, blah. You set up the challenge. The hook, of course, is the first 5 seconds, and then your outline. At the bare minimum, you'll have your the title that you plan to use, your thumbnail, the hook, ideally word for word what you're going to say, and then the main events is really what you want, because you're not going to know exactly what's going to happen. But if you can have the idea, like, I take off, Laney takes off. I'm flying, Laney's flying. I land, Laney lands. I'm in the Uber, Laney's, like, you kind of know the events that are going to take place. It kind of helps you when you're shooting, for storytelling, you can reference things that are going to happen, etc.
It's just like any other outline. So you have your outline and then you can go fill it in later. You go say, here's what I think is going to happen, and then you go back and say, okay, this is what actually did happen, and you kind of fill in the blanks.
Yeah, you can reconcile it later because you can't know what's going to happen. But the more you have up front, the more automatic it is for you when you're on camera to say things that are that help you in editing and help you tell that story. And then a shot list, and the North Star we talked about, kind of knowing the purpose, it lets you keep talking about it. Having a shot list takes that a step farther too, especially to help separate from pilot and creator, which is important. You don't want to ever do both at the same time. So have your shot list, that's usually for things on the ground. So okay, we want a shot of checking the tanks, something the fuel, putting fuel in, whatever you need to tell your story later. Have that shot list so that you don't forget anything.
Pilots love their checklists,
Pilots love a checklist. You should definitely have that for shooting. So for actually capturing, again, pilot first, creator second. You're always pilot first when you're flying. You never want to let the video or any of that get in the way of being PIC. That's always the most important thing. To do that, set your cameras and forget them. We'll talk here in a second about how you can do that with external batteries and all that, but never let making the video get in the way of flying. That's always the most important. And doing that pre-production work of planning it out and outlining really helps with that. Because you're not thinking through what should I be saying and what am I doing. You're flying. So a little bit about the gear that we use. This is kind of like the power setup right here. If you have nothing else, have a 360, an audio cable, and that dongle, which plugs right into the 360. So the result of that, we keep one of those on top of our dash. The result of that is you have a 360 capture, so you have forward, you have us, you have side to side, with audio, ATC audio already embedded on the file. So that becomes like your holy grail of your shoot. It's got everything. And then you sync the audio for the other cameras later. We run a 360 on the wing as well, and occasionally on the tail. We have the tie-down ring clamp, and then sync all of that up later. So in terms of mounts, you can get suction mounts, ideally only for inside. For outside, you can replace a screw on your wingtip, put that there. And then we'll do a GoPro with an ND filter behind our heads. So the ND takes the propeller distortion out. It kind of shoots through the windshield behind our heads. Kind of gets you looking side to side. It's a cool angle for sure.
Do you turn them on and off, or do you have a battery that lasts?
Yeah, so we like to just set it and forget it, and so and the way that we'll do that is we run them off of a big external battery. So we use a Anker power bank. It's like a 26,000 unit massive battery, and you use a high capacity USB charging cable. So this dongle accepts you can see the 3.5 millimeter audio jack right there. On the bottom it has a USB-C that takes power. So we've got 2 cords going into that dongle, so you're running off of external power for the 360. All of the cameras inside are running off of a big power bank.
And external?
Outside, that's more of a challenge. We've had horrible luck with GoPro remotes. They just always unpair and they're unreliable. Insta360, we've had the opposite experience. It's very reliable. So we will turn those off and on, kind of get through critical phase of flight and cruise, shut it off. Maybe if you're going to make a request or if you have something, you can turn it back on. Laning means that, so if you do have a passenger, it's best to just delegate that so you're not thinking about it as PIC. But the Insta360 remote is excellent. It works really well.
It took